Let's talk about some strategies for managing your day and your work sessions. I alluded to before that having deep work time is critical to academic success. You want to try and maximize the amount of deep work that you can do, but you also have to be really careful because deep work is exhausting. It takes up careful planning, and not all of your activities each day need to be deep work. There's plenty of shallow work to be had as well. And just because it's not deep work doesn't mean it's not important. I put almost all administrative functions in the category of shallow work, but those functions are often critically important. You also want to live a well-balanced, healthy life that entails prioritizing your relationships, your family, your physical health, your mental health. So it's important to be able to draw boundaries around those deep work sessions. Your life will be much better if you can do a few good hours of deep work and focus exclusively on that, and then set it aside and focus entirely on your relationships and your health and the activities you enjoy. And rather than just trying to mix it all together in, reading while you're doing other things and being distracted while you're with your family. And don't take that as putting pressure on you. Real life happens. It's hard to do this. I spent plenty of days reading books while holding my 3 kids when I was a SAS student. That's okay. I'm not trying to guilt trip you, but it's always good to have a sort of an ideal in mind of how we study. So the first thing I'd say is figure out which activities are deep work and which are shallow work. Then structure your day to do your deep work when and how you're best able to do it. Writing is deep work. I don't think there's any way around that. Planning for writing, organizing, research often is deep work, but maybe a little bit less. If you're sitting there trying to brainstorm what's the outline for my thesis, what are the chapters, that's probably deep work. If you're scouring PDF articles looking for the history of oil exports from Libya, that may be something you can do with a bunch of distractions and background noise. That's up to you to decide. Once you plan your deep work, you want to figure out how to structure each of those study sessions. Maybe the key thing here is you need to be intentional about entering deep work and then know when you're done. The easiest way to do that is by something called time boxing, where you set a timer for a set amount of time, have a clear goal, and say, I'm going to do this one thing for the next 25, 30, 60 minutes. And when the timer goes off, you get up, stretch, go do something else for a while. I said before, you want to try and keep your phone out of the room if you can. Not a bad idea to get one of these little kitchen timers. These are like $10. Something that's as not digital as possible that won't distract you. And discipline yourself to do that. If you know you only have to write for 25 minutes, it's much easier than if you face an open-ended all day, I'm supposed to write. The reality is after a while, you're going to be tired and need to stretch. If you're reading, you may want to initially approach a book as deep work, really dive in, get the essentials, the skeleton, start getting your notes together. Maybe later in the day when you're more tired, you're still able to keep reading, but do less cognitively demanding portions, just kind of really filling in the material. It's important to have goals to know what you're supposed to do. Maybe the worst feeling with this kind of knowledge work is sitting down with no idea what you're supposed to do. And you're most likely to experience this while you're working on a thesis. If you get to that point, you should talk with your thesis advisor about managing that. I try and break my daily activities into specific tasks. I even have them listed on a sort of personal business plan. There's writing, which is my most important deep work task, which I always try and do first thing in the morning. If I don't, I will probably not get it done. Planning are all the activities like outlining and preparing to write, knowing what's going to come next, what's tomorrow's section supposed to be, researching, revising, administrative work. All of these, in my mind, have sort of different levels of cognitive demand. So when I sit down to write, I try and tell myself, okay, for the next 60 minutes, this is a planning session. I'm going to plan this paper, which means organizing my references and notes, so I'm ready to write tomorrow, and then I'm done. And when I can discipline myself to do that, I find I'm far more productive and it's less stressful than just sitting down to an empty day, feeling the stress of all the things I'm supposed to be doing and not knowing how to get there. Part of the discipline of time boxing is knowing when to stop, because this work is tiring. You can't keep it up forever. you may be able to pull off a marathon work session. I'm very capable of doing marathon sessions for 12 hours, but I usually am a complete wreck afterwards. I'm so deep in my own head, I have a hard time coming back out. My relationships suffer a little bit. I'm usually kind of wasted the next day. Remember, you're pacing yourself for a marathon with this kind of work. Physical health, extremely important. Many of you are not used to being idle, physically, sitting at a desk. When I was a SAS student, I developed back injuries unlike anything I'd ever had before, and many of my colleagues reported the same thing. Talked to a physical therapist later. When I had an IT band injury, she said that tight hamstrings is one of the most common injuries she saw working with Stanford students, which lead to back injuries and IT band problems. So very important to be able to, get up from the desk, shake it off, go for a run or work out or whatever to stay healthy, because you won't realize it, but sitting at a desk doing this kind of work is maybe one of the most destructive things you can do to your body if you don't prioritize physical health. And then, of course, there's mental health and relationship health, spiritual health, whatever dimensions are important to you that you want to prioritize. So by being able to be ultra productive in your time-boxed hours of deep work, it frees you up to put the work down, go do other work. And this goes back to what we said about flow at the beginning. You want to maximize your flow states, whether that's flow reading a book or whether that's flow spending a nice evening with your spouse and playing with your kids. So with those prereqs out of the way, let's dive next into the specific activity of reading a book, and then we'll move into note-taking and some other tools for writing.